It's April 3rd, 2024. Welcome to the Path Podcast. My name is Tani. I'm here with Auk. Hey, Auk.
Hey, Tani. It's good to be here.
It's good to be here too, man.
Yeah. Can you believe that the year is a quarter of the way done?
Wow. That is hard to take.
It's a quarter of the way done.
It's crazy.
I know.
It's flying by.
It is. It is.
My root canal today didn't fly by.
Oh, gosh.
You were asking me about it before the show, and you asked me if I literally got a root canal.
Yeah, exactly.
Today. I was like, yeah, literally and metaphorically.
I've had some figurative root canals lately.
Yeah. It's funny.
So
it's like I don't really feel any physical pain, but this sure is unpleasant.
Exactly. So what were the symptoms that led you to this?
Oh, I have a crown on a tooth that I've probably had on there for 10, 15 years.
Yep.
And the nerve died and the tooth died, and there was like it needed to be drilled out and filled up in order to preserve what was left.
So did you did the crown crack off or
Nope.
anything?
No, I just had a little sensitivity on it, and the dentist took an x-ray and pointed out what's going on and said something we need to take care of before it becomes a bigger deal.
Oh. How often do you have x-rays?
Probably once a year.
Oh, okay.
I have a pretty
Regular.
serious gum disease.
Right.
And so I go to the dentist 3 or 4 times a year for
good.
a lot of cleanings and stuff.
Good for
to
you.
try to maintain what's left.
Do you water pick?
Yes, I do every day.
That's
and I recently
game changer.
It is, yeah. I recently switched back to the countertop style instead of like the cordless style.
Oh, interesting.
And I feel like while both are awesome,
Right.
and the cordless one helped me in that like I still water picked when I was on the road and stuff.
Right.
But I feel like the countertop one is more powerful and has a bigger reservoir.
Yeah.
And I use the whole in using the whole reservoir, I feel like I'm a little less rushed.
Right. Yeah. So I fill my countertop one twice. Once on the bottom.
Oh man,
and then once on the top.
maybe I should adopt that. I'll do anything at this point. I pretty much have resigned myself that I need the bone implants. I have pretty advanced, but I've been more or less holding ground and even making up some ground on a few in the last 10 years, and I'm trying to not get surgery or at least delay it.
I'm the same way. I skipped going to the dentist for probably like 8 years between the time I was like 18 and college and shortly after.
Yeah.
And it's like saving for retirement, which you do early on really hard to make up. I think I'm still trying to make up the difference.
That sounds right.
But do you do your whole routine after breakfast?
I usually don't have breakfast.
See, my thing is, I think that's the most important time to do really
After breakfast
or in the morning.
and before bed.
It's the longest time you'll go, like when you wake up and eat breakfast or about that time. It's the longest time that you'll go if you don't do it then.
Yep. That and also before bed.
Yeah, that's true. But see, like between breakfast and bed is only like less than 12 hours or 12 hours. It's usually less than 12 hours for me, So, anyways, some food for thought.
Yeah.
But hopefully you don't have any more of those.
Yeah, right?
So kind of getting a little bit, this is maybe associated with age, but man, we rode Wednesday 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of a crash. And I banged the outside muscle on my shin.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm glad I had on my knee pads because I think it saved me a little bit. It's still really sore, even through the night.
Is it sore anywhere else in your body?
Nope, just on that one spot.
Interesting. I crashed on lizards the following Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I've got one on my knee and my hip too.
Yep.
And it's interesting, similar comment on age. I feel like I could feel where the force of hitting my elbow
went through your
transferred
body.
into my body. And I had like sore muscles and
Like
structural
on the opposite
stuff.
side or something.
All more on the same side, but like in my neck and shoulders on that side.
Oh my gosh.
It kind of tripped me out.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the whipping of my head. Or
You almost feel like boom, and then it's like where the force exits.
my body wasn't that happy about it. The G forces.
I'm just, yeah, exactly. And I was like, let's just wait a week or week and a half or so. It's been 3 weeks, and I still wake up in the morning with that muscle.
Weird.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't need too much. Maybe you could physical therapy if it keeps going or something.
Maybe I can still run and ride though.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
it's probably a bruise. Maybe
think so.
Maybe worse, but hopefully not.
Yeah. Yeah. It did do that thing where it took a couple days for the bruise to start showing up, and then it started showing up like in my ankle and then in my foot.
Oh, it seeps down.
Right.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, how about some shop news?
Yeah. It'll be over by the time this podcast comes and goes, but we're super psyched on the family day with the Honeycutt family and Elliot.
I so wish I could go to that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it either for family reasons, but yeah, it seems like it's going to be awesome. And Elliot has got such a cool following and so much energy around him. It's so rad.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe someday we could have Elliot and his
that would be cool.
And his family on the podcast.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Other shop news. There's a lot of stuff on sale.
Okay.
But the sales are kind of so last year at this time, Santa Cruz and Specialized and other brands were starting to come out with like 30% discounts.
Right.
This year, it seems on the 24s so far, it's more like 10% off, 13% off, like the factory sale that Santa Cruz is doing now.
Right.
But we also still have wild deals on 2023s and 2022s, and new ones just keep coming up.
Right.
Like we just brought in we just brought in something that we hadn't been stocking, because we felt like it filled a nice spot and the price came down even more. The sale price came down on them. And it's the Trans Advanced 2 big battery bikes.
Oh, right.
The Starry Night color.
Yeah.
Which is like a dark blue with some sparkle. And that's a Fox 36 with an SLX drivetrain and I think a 800, like a big battery.
Yeah.
Like an actual big battery. And I think we have them on sale for under $4,700.
Oh my gosh.
The carbon frame. And it's like wild. So we keep finding new opportunities to bring riders good deals and more all the time. So that's worth checking out.
Yeah, and I just saw when we came in today, since the shops are open until 6:00, we start recording actually in the past 6:00, but we're starting a little bit later now. Saw a customer walking out with an E-Rain.
Yep. We just lowered the price on those too. I don't remember exactly what too, but about 5. We already had them on sale. They're 2022s and 2023s, and we're in 2024 now, so we lowered the price some more.
Yeah. So those are amazing.
Yep. We are the shop group rides are really back in full swing now.
Right.
And that's exciting. I plan on going on some. I think people should join them. The Path has a long history of group rides, and we met each other more. We met each other in the shop, but we became friends, I think, on shop rides.
That's true.
And so many of my best friends, really, I met on a shop ride. Maxwell, Joel.
I think you continue to do rides with some of those people, too.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
So the Dawn Patrol ride, every other Tuesday, Lot C. Let's see, I think it's 6:45. Is that right? I had it in front of me and I lost it. And then Women's Wednesday, every other Wednesday after work. And then the after work ride every other Thursday at Lot C at 5:30.
Right.
Lot C is a parking lot in Irvine Park next to Oaks.
Right. Does that women's ride go on the same day that we record? Or is it the off weeks?
I don't know. I'm not certain.
Yeah.
And
those are great. I wish maybe I'll try to get out and do that a little bit more.
Oh, Pivot launched more brunch builds.
Yeah, I saw it.
So the Firebird and the Trail 429 are now available as brunch builds.
Brunch builds, right. So what's the concept and history and on those?
I think so. The concept is everyone's got bikes on sale. Pivot kind of looked at it as we're going to lower the prices, but we're also going to add some value. I think is the story. So a regular ride build from Pivot is typically about $6,800 for a Firebird or a Trail 429, and maybe 6,600, depends on which bike and which shock and everything.
Right.
The Brunch builds are $5,000, more or less a Shimano ride build with a down spec to a Dior cassette, but an up spec to a Fox Factory 36.
Yeah, and
or 38 in the case of a Firebird.
Right. And the Fox Factory shock.
I don't think rear shock. Maybe in some cases. I think it depends. And also, if it doesn't come with the rear shock, one of the cool things about Pivot is we can order from Pivot
to have
upgrades like that. Most brands really won't work with us on that.
Right.
Pivot will. So the upgrade, some of those upgrades on Pivot tend to be more economic. We'll upgrade anything because we'll give you a little bit of credit for the shock and try to make it work for you. But the value is a little higher when we don't have to eat the takeoff part.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think even when it's not a factory shock, you can upgrade a Pivot for sometimes $150 to $300 factory per end, depending on exactly what you're talking about. And don't quote me on anything, but I'm in the ballpark.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm shooting from the hip, but I'm in the ballpark. And anyway, most of the Brunch builds that I looked at, they don't come with a factory rear shock, but they do come with a factory fork, which I think more than offsets the cassette downspec, by quite a bit.
Right.
And most of the other parts I think are the same as a regular ride build.
The wheels. What about the wheels?
That being said, if anyone wants a deal on one of our ride builds, hit me up. Because the ride builds kind of are hard to sell now next to the Brunch builds.
Right.
So we have a few ride builds. Find them on our web store and hit me up, and I'll make sure that you don't feel like you should have bought a Brunch build.
Right. Yeah, that's both of those great ways to get into the Pivot line.
And if you're not familiar with those models, the Trail 429 is what I would consider a modern trail bike with enduro attitude.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's like a 120 rear, 130 front. Yeah. It's kind of quite tall boy like,
right?
Or smuggler like,
right?
And then the Firebird is big enduro, dual 29, 170, I believe, in the front for sure. Big enduro.
Yep.
And
the Mach 6.
Mach 6 is dual 27.5.
Yep.
And those are also still available for Brunch.
Yeah.
And I think so. The name, where did it come from? I think they're spinning off another brand's promo, or kind of playing on another brand's name nomenclature.
Right. Yeah. I was talking to Caleb, the pivot driver, and I think he's riding a Mach 6, which is awesome.
Yeah, Caleb likes 27.5 front wheels sometimes. Yeah.
He's a pinner.
He is. Well, very, very, very skilled riders, I think, have the precision to ride a little bit sketchier front wheel sometimes too.
Right.
Have you ridden with Caleb?
I rode with him 3 Wednesdays ago.
He's quite the rider.
Yeah.
I knew you could just kind of tell he's a good rider, and I'd never ridden with him, and I got to ride him with him a little bit. And he's a pretty strong pedaler. And we were
a very strong pedaler.
I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were riding e-bikes.
Yeah, he was. We were all riding e-bikes together, Auk and I and Tyler from the Path, and I was riding next to Caleb on full power, and Tyler and Auk were kind of talking and taking it easy behind us a little bit. I noticed Caleb looks like he's working pretty hard.
Right.
And I keep noticing that, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm thinking to myself, and then I look over and there's no lights on his bike.
Oh, man. Right.
And that was a pretty steep section, and he was riding a
Shuttle LT.
Yeah. Big enduro.
Big enduro.
Big battery, big enduro, Fox 38.
Gosh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it was great times riding with Caleb.
The LT comes with an EP801 now.
Oh, interesting.
And
that's right.
Do you know the difference?
The differences between the 8 and the 801?
Yeah, I thought everyone knew, but a lot of people, it turns out, don't know.
The 801, you can do the automatic shifting on?
That's true.
Yep.
You know, the difference that jumps out the most to me is on the 801, the on-off button for the bike is on the remote and not on the frame.
Oh.
And
interesting.
the on-off buttons on the frames have a separate power source that can fail. So it's like one more potential failure point, in addition to just kind of being the old way.
Right.
So I thought
that's a good move.
And I think a little more peak watts too. And Shimano says quieter. But the EPA is still a really good motor, I think.
Yeah.
And Caleb is the person who replanted that seed in my head recently, actually, which is kind of what made me think of it.
Right.
Like he's a fan of the EP8.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So those are. Hope we can ride more on Wednesdays. That was a lot of fun. That midweek was really helpful to me.
Me too. It was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Glad to see you're riding more too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Man, I'm still super digging that Switchblade too. You know, it's so weird how I keep going. I've owned almost every Santa Cruz.
I'm going to interrupt you. I love how you're like riding the push bike too.
Yeah. Pedal bike, push bike.
Pedal bike, push bike, yeah.
Just to illustrate what I'm going to try to say, I've owned pretty much every Santa Cruz. I've owned multiple Nomads and Tallboys, and I had that Fry Sauce Mega Tower.
Right.
And I've never had a high tower.
Never had a high. Oh, interesting.
And the point is that over the last 10 plus years, I've tended to not gravitate towards that.
In between a Tallboy and a Mega Tower, right, type of deal.
I was generally going for one or the other.
Right.
And, you know, it really is nice in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I keep finding myself kind of appreciating that it is in between those two styles of bike.
Yeah. I did have a high tower for a little bit. I don't think I appreciated it as much as maybe if I went back to something like that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also think the modern, I don't know what, your high tower was an era where I think in that era, those bikes tended to be 2XE. That's that style of bike. And I think maybe that's when I stopped paying as much attention to that style of bike too. I had a Tallboy LT, which is kind of like the predates the high tower. And I liked that bike. But there was a sense for me with that bike that the travel was more capable than other aspects.
Right.
And then having that much travel with a little bit steep head angle and fork dives, and it's really steep. And
right. It was like a 70 degree or maybe even 71.
I don't think it was that bad.
No?
I'm just going to guess 69 or 68.
69, okay.
But still.
Yeah.
And also, too, the new high tower has so much more effective suspension and a steeper seat angle, and so much steeper seat angle.
Longer reach. Everything about it.
Man, longer reach. I'm currently riding the longest reach bike I've ever ridden.
Okay, so what is the reach?
I think in the low setting where I'm running it, it's 469.
Oh my gosh.
And in high, it's 472, I think.
Man.
Or something like that.
I feel like I might be the Trance that I'm riding might not even be 460.
For reference, I think that's as long or longer than a large original process.
Yeah, because I think the original process was 435
for mediums. Yeah,
and I thought that was
so
long.
It was probably a 460 in a large. So it's tripping me out.
69.
That how much I'm liking it.
Interesting.
And I'm not that surprised that I like it pedaling in the saddle with a real steep seat angle where a lot of the reach is kind of eaten up by the seat angle in terms of top tube or reach to the bars. Kind of not that surprised that I like that, but I do really like that. But the experience I'm having that I just didn't even know about is the sense of being able to lean the bike over in a corner, separate from the bike where I'm still mostly upright, and have space in front of the seat to move back and forth, to move forward and back in front of the seat.
Yeah.
And Something about that is like a revelation for me.
Oh,
It's really trippy. Where I used to be kind of stuck either right over the seat or like just barely in front of it.
right.
And now on this bike, my full attack position, like really crowding the bars and like leaning on the front tire, trying to like really get traction on the front wheel, is, I think my butt's probably, with the seat down, I think I'm still like a good amount in front of the seat, you know, like.
Yeah. That's an interesting.
It creates a really cool opportunity to play with the weighting on the two wheels and to lean the bike over more.
Yep.
And to move front and back and feel what's going on with the traction.
Right.
I really, really like it.
Wow. Maybe that's part of why you like the bike so much. It's
maybe I
the,
finally got the reach I should have had this whole time. And remember when we used to sometimes get small bikes?
Right.
Like I used to go every once in a while I'd be like, I'm always in between the two on the size chart. Maybe I'll try a small this time.
So that you could feel like you could maneuver around the bike.
Yeah.
But having a longer reach, it's counterintuitive.
It is, right?
That it gives you the space to do what you are trying to.
That and short cranks.
Well, the short cranks probably also help as well because
I feel like the things that I wanted to accomplish that I was having a hard time accomplishing that I thought going smaller might help.
Yep.
I don't think going smaller usually helps, but shorter cranks makes those things work. Like separating my hips from having short legs makes it harder to separate your hips from the bike. You know, like when the bike leans over and the rider doesn't.
Yep.
But short cranks help with that a lot too.
Yeah, and being a little bit in front of the saddle and being up a little bit, you're not running into the saddle as you're trying to do that.
Right. Not as much.
Oh, that's really interesting. And so the size small doesn't accomplish that because even though you might be able to move around the bike, you're being interrupted by the saddle.
Well, and back in the day when people were sizing up even on processes, maybe I should have too. Although I think the medium had just a seat tube length that was hard for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Still.
Definitely.
Yeah. Or the large process.
Yeah, see, that's an interesting conversation. I don't think many people are having that conversation about the longer reach, that in front of the saddle movement.
Yeah, I think people are. Some people might be describing it differently, and I think not everyone is. But the other thing about it is it puts the front wheel further out in front of you, a longer front center,
right?
Which I think is at least part of what I like about a generally slacker head angle.
Right. Do you? Along with that, and maybe also you're starting to run a little, instead of running that 35 millimeter stem, are you running the 44 millimeter stem?
That's true. And I think I like that too.
Right.
And we've talked about that on the show before about matching the offset of the fork to the stem length. And I feel like that idea is gaining steam in the kind of zeitgeist of mountain bikers.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. Man. Maybe I'll demo a switchblade.
You can just borrow mine because mine's our demo bike is alloy wheel XT Pro, and my bike is a carbon wheel transmission bike. So you should borrow mine.
Thank you. And since it's an air fork and an air shock, it'll be easier to. Yep. Man. Okay. Let's see. We've got listener questions. Thanks to everyone who's responding to our listener on my last minute post. Thanks to everyone for chiming in. We might not get to all the questions.
We might not.
But is there anything else we want to chat about?
Well, I did have one more thing on my list.
Okay, totally.
We were on a ride the other day, and then again on another recent ride.
Yep.
Something that jumped out at me about Fazua is how well it restarts when you have to
Stop.
fail.
Right.
When you can't make it up
or something. Yeah.
It's so good at restarting.
Yeah.
Like you can restart on something. In other e-bikes, they kind of either don't come on or surge and spin out.
Right.
And it just comes on immediately. The second you start to push on the pedal, it comes on.
Yeah.
And it comes on just the right amount. You can restart on you can restart on the thing that you messed up. and just get it right.
Yeah, for sure.
It's trippy.
Yeah. And that's actually the most recent, not the most recent firmware, but I had my firmware updated, and that really came to shine after that initial, because I was finding the exact opposite. When I first bought this, and I've probably had the relay for, I don't know, 6 or 9 months, however long. And then, I was finding the exact opposite. And then the firmware came out.
I'm glad we brought this up. Interestingly, on a whim, I finally downloaded the Fazua app and connected it to my bike the other day and did a firmware update.
Oh.
So maybe that's why I was noticing it.
Yeah. Because maybe you were encountering the same thing I was.
Maybe I thought I just hadn't noticed how good it was before, but maybe it just hadn't been that good before.
Right. Yeah, that is very possible.
That's interesting. But also, the Fazua app is pretty rad.
I'm going to check it out.
Probably the thing that makes it so probably everyone should do it is it tells you your battery life in percentages, exactly, like down to 1%.
That
increments.
Would be great, especially because I've been trying to push the one battery much longer.
Yeah, I feel like knowing your battery life percentage, not just in like 20% increments, it really makes a big difference.
Right, trying to calculate in your head, right? Calculate how long have I been on this one bar?
Yeah, or how long have I been on 2 bars?
Right.
It's kind of almost even, because by the time you're on 1 bar, you've probably already made all your decisions.
Right.
I feel like
Yeah.
It's at 2 bars where I'm like, am I going to do another climb?
Yeah.
Exactly. And 2 bars could mean just over 20% or just under 40%.
Exactly. And
so that's a big difference.
Yeah. Like, or 1 bar could be 20%, just under 20%, or it could be almost
wherever something else happens. Exactly. I'm not sure what happens
turns
next.
To orange. That light turns to orange.
I think stuff happens.
Right.
It forces you into eco mode. Maybe
once it turns into orange, like you could ride on 1 bar for quite a bit of time, and then it'll turn into orange and it starts forcing you into eco. But I don't have the app, and so thanks for the.
Yeah, it's one of those like easy to put off things, and then it actually seems, and you can do updates on it.
See, that's awesome.
So you don't have to bring your bike to the shop as much. And if you want to, I'm not that into doing this, but you can remap all your power modes too.
Yeah. Eric and Aaron, who was on the show, I think he has 2 different setups on his Rise. Again, it's not the same app, but you're able to do that on the Rise Orbea software.
I got some info on the new Rise, and like we'll be talking more when I'm allowed to actually talk about it, but it's kind of exciting.
Ooh, awesome. Man, so I was just looking at a new release of an old classic from Nolly Bikes, and they've got an alloy Coltman, I think is what it is. It's a 170 now. I thought that used to be like a 140, 150 bike. But anyways, the build that they sell, 37 to 38 pounds. It's a big enduro bike, 37 to 38 pounds, and it kind of fits in with what we've been talking about. Bikes these days seem to weigh just a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think you can, if you want to, you can milk I don't know that they necessarily have to for everybody.
Right. But that bike's probably not getting much lighter.
Yeah. Also, remember when a Fox 36 was considered an enduro fork?
Right.
I mean, I think that's just part of the conversation too.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of another conversation that keeps happening in the shop. People keep trying to decide they either want a Relay XO PNW or they want a Heckler SL.
Right.
And I just keep telling everyone, just pick a fork. They're both awesome bikes.
Right.
Pick a fork and put it on either one. And the difference is described in the differences of the forks. And it just and it plays out throughout the bike.
Right. Because whatever fork you put on it, you're going to work it into the wheels, the rear shock.
If you want a Fox 38, you want a big enduro bike.
Right.
And if you want a Lyric, then you want kind of an all-mountain, like what used to be considered enduro before the Fox 38 came out.
Right. So you said Lyric, you said Fox 38, and then you jumped to Lyric. So Alec from Minnesota dropped us a question. He's like 200 to 210 pounds. He does some rocky tech with some jumps, and he's riding a bike. He's got like 150 rear travel, and so he was asking 36 or Lyric, playful, poppy. One better, like maintenance wise? Do the buttercups really make a difference? But I thought it was interesting, like we talk about, pick a fork for the Heckler SL,
Right.
36 versus 38, a Lyric, Lyric versus 36. Go for it.
I think the buttercups do make a difference.
Yep.
I think the maintenance on the T forks is comparable, and the reliability is comparable.
Yep.
I think they do feel slightly. I think the RockShox tends to overall be quieter. I think that it'll be. I think it's the time of year where Fox launches new stuff.
Yep.
And Fox hasn't really changed their forks since 2021. They're 36 and the 38.
Right. Maybe they'll be changing them up.
I would think. I mean, I'm in a tough spot between like what I would speculate. I would speculate a lot of things. You know?
Yep. Totally.
And I would speculate that it's time for a new fork from Fox.
Right.
Sometime this spring or summer. Well, how about this? Every year, sometime around March, April, May, Fox comes out with the new stuff.
Right.
And every few years, it's actually new.
Right.
And other than that, it's like different colors, maybe slightly different specs and features and stuff.
Right.
So I think it's been a few years.
So, Alec from Minnesota, maybe wait a little bit.
I mean, if you're curious about that question, maybe wait a little. I don't think you have to wait. I think the current Fox 36 is awesome.
Yep, I do
and
too.
Also, Fox had them on sale. I don't know if they still do, so they can be had at a great value.
Yep.
Also, the Lyric is awesome.
Yep.
I had the pre-Buttercup Lyric, and I want a new one. I'm convinced the Buttercups are noticeable improvement.
I have a new one, and it's actually it's the flight attendant version. It's an amazing fork. I feel like years ago there was a time where I couldn't quite get my Lyric to feel quite right, and the 36 was, in my mind, like that.
Is that like mid-stroke plushness?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd put it there.
Yeah.
But RockShox has done some amazing stuff with their.
I feel like RockShox has historically had more mid-stroke support and therefore less mid-stroke plushness than Fox for quite a while.
Yep.
And I feel like they've been moving towards each other.
Right.
On that. Like Fox has been increasing their mid-stroke and end-stroke support.
Right.
And RockShox has been making their forks plusher in those zones.
Right. Yeah, so Alec, I don't know if we made the choice easier or harder. You probably can't go wrong.
Can't go too wrong. I think a little bit of it might come down to brand preference and just feel preference.
Yep.
I still think that the Fox products overall have a little softer feel.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I was going to say planted, but yeah.
Planted. Where the RockShox products I feel have more going on with the damping and maybe more control and ground feel. Might be the way to phrase that.
Right.
And also high speed performance.
Right.
I don't know about more, but very, very good high speed performance.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Great.
And it's a 150 bike?
150
It's
bike.
going to be a 150 fork?
150 fork.
Because at that weight, part of me says get a 38 or a Zeb and cut the travel down to 160.
That's what I kind of mentioned to him too. Yeah, I mean,
if you're pushing it,
you're not a tiny person.
I would say I weigh 180-ish right now, and I prefer a 38 to a 36 anywhere over at 160 travel. I think I would prefer a 38 to a 36.
Yeah. Yeah. I would tend to agree with that.
At 150, I'm not as sure. I don't know if a 38 goes to 150 either.
Right.
So there's that.
But if you got a 150 bike, you could put a 160
It's also
on it.
what bike is it, and if the bike is like a 6.5 under 7 pound frame or not real built,
right?
Like it might not make that much sense to put this fork on it that makes you want to smash your frame into stuff that isn't as burly as the fork.
Right. Oh, good point. So speaking of burly things and smashing them into rocks and features, Jason had sent a different listener. Jason, thanks for sending the question in about wheels. This guy says he's 275 ding, and he's trying to figure out how to build up a set of durable wheels. He's considering I9 11s, straight gauge spokes, et cetera, 511s.
DT 511 rims?
Yep. That's what he's kind of considering.
I think those are all solid choices. Resounding yes on the DT rims.
Yep.
And resounding yes on the straight gauge spokes.
Yep.
It sounds like he's not concerned about weight. He just wants them strong.
Correct.
I think the i9 hub, 1.1 hubs are a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you care a lot about a lot of engagement points, especially.
Right.
If you don't, you might get a faster spinning hub and less maintenance and maybe burlier with a DT 350.
Especially with the new design.
Right. That doesn't allow you to thread the inner star into the hub until the hub shell explodes.
Right. At 275, you might
which
be doing
I
that.
know one person who did that. Or I can remember one person who consistently did that. Surge used to do that.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think we understood what was going on. We just knew Surge would split hub shells on DT hubs.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of power.
Yeah. Well, he had big calves. I think he was like almost a pro hockey player. Like,
Right. Yeah. Okay. No. So that's good. Yeah. DT Swiss these days.
So as far as I feel like the hub is an important conversation. There's part of me that wants to like go old school and be like, maybe check out Hadley or something that's really like those are known for their bomb proofness and they're not as high of engagement. I haven't touched or sold one in a while, but that used to be my recommendation for people like that back in the day.
I almost wish I didn't sell my Hadley wheels.
Yeah.
Hadley hubs.
There are a few other interesting hub. I don't think the 1.1's a bad choice, especially if you want a lot of engagement points.
Right. Oh, that's great. Dave, local volunteering legend and puts a lot of time into the community here. He sent a question as well. Saddles. What are people riding as far as saddles? Again, he's probably he's a big fellow. I think he's worn his saddle out.
I think there was a time when most saddles weren't very good.
Right.
And like I remember when almost everyone I knew rode either a Specialized or a WTB.
Yep. I still ride WTBs.
I think there are a lot more good saddles now, and it makes the conversation more complicated.
Right.
A lot of people are riding Ergon and Fit. A lot of people are riding Ergon.
Right.
A lot of people still ride WTB and Specialized. I really like the Spank saddles personally.
Right.
A lot of people in our shop ride. A lot of our customers ride those. But these days, I think more. It's harder to find a bad saddle these days. So there's a lot more good options.
So what should someone be doing in their selection?
I think you want to know whether you like a very flat saddle with a lot of support or a more curved saddle where the wings curve down.
Right.
I think for the most part, less curved down is more anatomically healthy, though, for most people because it supports your sits bones better.
Right.
So in general, I personally like saddles and tend to recommend saddles that have a fairly flat across the widest part where the wings don't curve down.
Yep.
I do believe that it's good to get your sits bones measured, and we'll do that, and a lot of shops will do that. I think we have to move our sits bone measuring device over and get a new one.
Right. Can you do the sit on some cardboard?
Yeah.
As well. So if you find like some good thick cardboard and take a put it on a bench or something and sit on it.
I think it works best if you tear off. What you want is the cardboard that's showing one of the corrugated showing the corrugated part on one side,
right.
Because that's where you're going to see the indentations.
Right.
So you can strip off the surface so you can see the corrugation, or you can buy cardboard that shows the corrugation.
Right. Or just come into a shop.
Yeah. And that's a point of reference. There's no direct if you're this sits bone width by this saddle, but there is a direct. The wider you are, the wider of a saddle you'll probably want.
Correct.
And a good rule of thumb for a lot of people is just to add 20 millimeters to your sit bone width. And then get that wide or wider.
Right.
That's kind of your minimum width.
Got it.
I personally find that I like about my sit bone width is I think about 124 or something.
Okay.
And I like about a 145 or a 150.
Got it.
And I actually sort of almost prefer the feel of a 150 to a 145 until I have to get behind it and get back in front of it.
Right.
And then it becomes a tough choice.
Right.
Which I do have to do that, so it's a tough choice.
Right.
And I usually go more on that 145 zone.
Right. No, that's great. And whatever your shape, your posterior is not an indicator of sit bone width.
That's true. You can have wide hips and narrow sit bones, or narrow hips and wide sit bones.
Yep.
Or any other variation.
Exactly. A very tiny posterior and wide sit bones are very.
Yeah.
So this is all really, really great stuff.
But also WTB just changed a bunch of their saddles, I think, and I'm curious to try some of their new saddles. So there's that too.
Yeah. I've had a saddle so long that I've actually just worn all the cover off of it.
Wow.
Like, not all the cover, but pretty much a significant portion of the cover. For a while, it was turning my commuter shorts colors.
You're still riding that?
I kind of am.
Kind of?
Not kind of. I am, actually. Yeah, not kind of. I am. Yeah, it was turning my shorts colors, and then it stopped turning my shorts colors because it has no more. But I got to get a new saddle.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you deserve a new saddle.
Thank you. I don't know if I have to, but maybe I deserve one. Yeah, because if you happen to, because it's not really the padding that's the thing that's making the saddle necessarily anatomically correct.
While that's true, I do think that your sit bones like a little bit of padding.
A little bit of padding.
Too much, and you start to sink in and smush on your soft tissue,
right,
which is no good.
Right, could cause numbness in places and blood restriction,
potential even health problems.
Yep, totally. Man, there are a lot of questions. Still a lot of thoughts out there.
Keep them coming.
All right, let's see. So, oh man, Mike asks, in the bike industry, has the plane finally crashed into the mountain? Have we hit rock bottom?
I think it's a good question. I'm glad that Mike asked, actually, because this has been on my mind lately. And I would say for the second half of 2022, maybe starting in October or so of 2022, maybe not, maybe the final quarter of 2022, through all of 2023, well, until October of 2023, it was about a year. Bike prices were in an absolute free fall.
Yeah.
So when I say that, I mean a few things. I mean that bikes that were no longer this year's bike, like what seems like a good price for them today, one day, a week later, would seem 20% too high. You know,
Right.
And
right.
so like we would get these opportunity buys. It would be like, oh, 20% off the 2023s. And we'd buy them and it'd be like, oh no, 20% off is the new full price on those.
Yeah.
Like no one's interested.
Yeah. Man, I remember, like before the October even, there was this period where you were trying to figure out what the percentage was. And 20%, at some point we were saying, man, that feels like things are sort of starting to sell again at 20.
Right.
And that was just like a brief pause.
And maybe it was 10 and 15% off that weren't working in the early parts of the thing. And then in the fall of 2023, we brought in a few sale bikes at a price that I was like, maybe they'll sell at that price. And it was like the Trans 2s at $19.95 and the Trans Elite.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of the bikes we've been talking about. And I was like, I'll bring in a few and see if they sell.
Right.
Because we already had a bunch of bikes that we thought would sell that didn't. I wasn't about to take a big chance on more. So we brought in a few and they sold, and I was like, yeah, we'll see how long this lasts.
Right.
Now Giant is starting to sell out on some of those.
Oh, interesting.
Like the Trans Elite 2s, the orange ones, they're out of small and large.
Oh, interesting.
We still have one small and a couple of larges, I think. But I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't have to lower their price any further, and therefore we can't lower our price anymore.
Right.
And they're still selling, and they're going to sell out. And that's true of most of those bikes. They're either starting to run low at Giant, or we still have one of the lowest prices on the internet on them, if not the lowest price.
Right.
And there's not someone else who has them for 30% lower all of a sudden, just like there always was before.
Right.
So, and that's true across brands. So like last year at this time, Santa Cruz came out with their factory sales, and it was like 35% off in some cases, I think.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
This year, the factory sale was like 10 to 13% off, which is way more pre-pandemic normal. Right. You might have some slow-moving models that you do a mid-season 10 to 13% off, maybe even 15.
Right.
Like that happened all the time pre-pandemic. That was just kind of normal. So it feels to me as though for now, we actually are past rock bottom, as in we're still very, very much in a buyer's market. This is not some kind of seller's market. Right? I'm not trying to make it. I'm not trying to make it into something it's not.
Right.
But again, I think prices have stabilized for now.
Right. And
where they have stabilized is, I think, value-wise, a little bit lower than where they were pre-pandemic, but not nearly as high. I think that during the peak of demand, there was a lot of bikes were 20 to 30% more expensive than they would be not in that environment.
Right.
And I think a lot of consumers really assume that was just brands taking money hand over fist, and probably in some cases some of that went on. I think in most cases the cost of shipping went up. The cost of it was very, very difficult to have a labor force to make anything happen, and so you had to charge. You actually did have to charge. The cost of doing business was actually higher, and not just because you had to wipe down the menus at the restaurant or whatever. There were real hard costs that people were facing, and supply chain issues that you had to work harder to get it, and then you couldn't make as many of them, and you still have. Long story short, in that environment, I think the prices were 20 to 30% higher than kind of real street value at a not crisis environment like that. And that also maybe even a little higher than that, because that matches, I think, used values were also inflated that much.
They were.
So, and I also feel like used bikes, the values have started to
come back a little bit.
If it's 2023 or newer.
Right.
Because really, I think I misspoke a little bit. A lot of the bikes that we're buying in the fall of 23, those were 2022s. And the industry is still trying to work through those 2022s.
Right.
And on those, I think it's like, oh, you don't have to sell a Trance 2 for cheaper than a Stance. You just have to sell it for a tiny bit more than a Stance 1, and those will sell for, like, there's kind of a bottom value of a good bike.
Sure.
It's like, hey, this is a good new bike with a warranty, and it has a Dior drivetrain and a decent RockShox fork.
Yep.
Like, that'll maybe always be worth $19.95.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Sure.
Or not. We don't know. My crystal balls all suck.
Yeah, but I mean, like, coming through what we came through, 1995 was the price. I mean, and that's a pretty extreme time.
I think that bike was $28.95 or something during the pandemic.
Right.
And I don't think that one was overinflated the way some were.
Right.
Either. And so the industry really didn't overproduce 2023. In fact, a lot of brands barely made any 2023s.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So we're still, as an industry, working through 2022s. I think the 2022 prices have stabilized. I think there's not an overstock of 2023s to where people have to go nuts to get rid of them.
Yep.
And I think 2024 remains to be seen. But so far, the big players, especially in our world, like high-end mountain,
right?
And we say high-end, that can mean $2,000.
Sure,
that's not necessarily for a lot of riders. It doesn't mean what we think it means, right? Like,
right.
But I think in that category, and especially like 5,000 and over, we just don't have the huge overstock of 23s and 24s that we did with 22s,
right?
That we still do with 22s. And I think the older those get, the easier it is to explain why the new one isn't that same price.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, when you've got the 2022 for $19.95 and the 2023 is just a different color, that's why Giant didn't make very many 2023s.
Right.
Like, and that's why we're already into the 24s with them, but still selling 2022s from them.
Right.
So it's interesting. Obviously, I live and die on this conversation, and I have a huge investment in being right about these things. so I have a little bit more than pride on the line, and I still don't have that much confidence that I know what's going to happen.
Wow. So Mike, if you're out there, thanks for that question. I think that conversation could be had with you, Mike, for sure. Come on in and
and I think the bumper sticker too is treat it, if you're a buyer, understand that it's a buyer's market, and understand that sellers are probably motivated. But for most of us, we have survived the moment of desperation.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and some of us, you might find someone who's in a moment of desperation, and then all bets are off.
Right. I think we're close to calling this a podcast, but I have one more question, and then maybe we'll end on this one.
Yeah.
Zach6251 asks, out of all the Path employees, who has the best style?
Oh, man. I can't pick favorites.
You're right. Maybe we'll just end with a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Not you, Zach. Just kidding. I would want to. I hear the question, and half the time when I hear the question, in my own head, I hear it as like personal, like a style with clothes and hair and stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then the other half, I hear it as style on the bike.
On the bike, yeah. I immediately jumped to style on the bike. I love riding with all the guys from the shop. Anyone that I've ridden with, I've just really enjoyed riding with for all the years. So
yeah. What I will say is, what do you think is good? What can you say any defining qualities of good style on a bike? Because I feel like I can do that.
Oh man! Now see, here's the thing. Like, I don't know. Is good style having the freedom to not wear exactly what everyone might consider to be the in style of mountain biking?
Oh, I thought we meant like riding style.
So riding style. So we'll jump off onto riding style too. But from a what you wear on the bike.
Right.
I love the fact that there's so many different like personalities of what people wear riding here on the shop. Amazing riders wearing just unique things, and that's That's awesome.
A lot of the path employees have a lot of flair.
I love it. I love it. Oh gosh. So, yeah, one of the first times I rode, not first time I rode at the shop, but first time I rode with one of the former employees here. There's a trail ride, and he showed up with bibs.
Who did?
One of the guys on the ride.
Just bibs.
Just bibs, flats, and obviously his helmet. Just proceeded to shred all day long, the whole ride.
I remember that. That was wild.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
On a rigid.
I'm picturing him riding up Ridge Park in front of me right now out of the saddle on that day.
Oh my gosh, dude, that was awesome. So, style. Okay, riding style. Oh my gosh.
I feel like right off the bat, good riding style, kind of like good surfing style. A lot of times it's being relaxed and it's kind of making it look fluid and not making it look forced.
Right.
And almost making it look easier than it is.
Right.
But as I'm saying that, I picture there's a million lines through every turn.
Yeah.
But a lot of turns have like a really wide sweeping line that you can take and more of an inside hard cutting slashing line.
Right.
And the inside cutting slashing line might be kind of almost making it look harder and less graceful and easy and smooth, but that's good style too.
Right.
Like cutting the corner foot out, whatever.
Right.
Big cutty right into the apex that you lose all your speed, but like almost blow up the turn.
Right.
So it can kind of go both ways on that, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think overall for me, good style it means kind of like when you see an animal moving in the wild, like they're not no one had to show them how to do that.
Yep.
And like they're not like thinking like get your hips forward or like elbow out or like they're just getting their hips forward, getting their elbow out. Like
exactly. Exactly.
So it's like,
and what about the animal who like can do that uphill all day long and ride everything on the downhills as well? Right. Maybe not with the same flair or that line choice, but just the whole ride put together is like a thing of grace.
The other thing for me with style is that you're kind of always doing something.
Right.
You're never just a passenger on the bike.
Right.
So I guess in some ways that could be taken as like the more plow style of riding is less good style. Because I really do feel like you can plow through a rock garden or you can jump over it or you could maybe pump something on it or manual it.
Right.
And like sometimes plowing it might be the fastest line.
Right.
It's probably not the best style. But the other big thing for me with style is seeing things in a fresh way and expressing that, like just a different line, just picking a different line, and then maybe doing something different on that line too.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of that like skateboarder in me.
Right. Yeah. But I'll also say, again, having ridden maybe more with the likes of Brian at the shop and what have you, like it's a different style on riding, not just what he wears, but in riding, and maybe not on the downhills, but that's what I'm kind of talking about, like putting the whole ride together.
Yeah. But also, if you watch Brian's riding style, it's pretty effortless. It's
that's
pretty
what
smooth.
I mean, right?
And like
and on
even on the parts of riding that he maybe doesn't pride himself on the most, he's never like
exactly
gripping the grips too tight or so yeah, I mean
that's exactly it. Yeah, for sure.
And for sure he has a way of making just riding a bike seem natural and easy.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much.
In every situation.
Yeah.
And I mean I used to be a little more keyed into this than I am now, but there's definitely kind of all of the versions of this conversation for pedaling hard uphill too.
Right.
Like
yeah, exactly.
And that, I guess, a rounder pedal stroke, I think, is a better riding style for pedaling uphill.
That is very true.
Or just a more even power throughout the pedal stroke.
Right.
But then again, mashing's pretty bad. We were just enjoying that other ride fantasy of that guy mashing up the hill. So I feel like almost every example I come up with for good style, I can almost picture the exact opposite, being good style.
Right? Oh, that's a good thought. Is that a podcast?
I think so. Thanks, Auk. Thanks, Jake. Thanks to all the listeners, and huge thanks to all the people we work with here at the Path, and all the riders who come in the shop and go deal with us on our web store throughout the nation. And let's all remember to love the bike we ride.